If someone beats Trump, let's say DeSantis beats Trump, don't mistake what they're going to say. They're going to say that DeSantis is actually worse than Trump, that he's worse than Trump, who was Hitler. And you're already hearing this. This was on MSNBC. And Michael Beschloss, who I think the last time we played a clip from him, Buck, was saying that if Republicans won, this might be the last election we ever had in 2022, and the next step would be firing squads, like killing people. I think that was Michael Beschloss the last time we played his cut from MSNBC. But I want you to listen to this take. First of all, he messes up Ron DeSantis' name and calls him Rick DeSantis, which seems as a prognosticator like a big whiff, given that most people know Ron DeSantis' first name. But he says that he is a far right-wing fascist, that he is, in fact, Mussolini in Florida. This is what they're saying on MSNBC about DeSantis. Listen.
People who try to get a nomination in parties, do it by trying to appeal to what they think will work. Well, look what Rick DeSantis has done in Florida. He was known as sort of a nondescript political leader, member of Congress. Suddenly, he really has tried to turn himself into sort of a local Mussolini in Florida with the book banning and the brutal tactics. And even this week, this suggestion that bloggers have to register with the state for the honor of writing about the governor and other political leaders. We have to call this what this is. This is fascism and authoritarianism that goes even beyond what Trump has talked about. That's what he thinks is going to work in that party. And in a way, that's the scariest thing of all.
I mean, this is delusional. First of all, it is true that Rick DeSantis is both a terrible governor and a terrible presidential candidate, because I don't know. There probably is a Rick DeSantis somewhere.
Ron DeSantis better be looking over his shoulder at this Rick guy, because he sounds like a real threat. It's
like Ron, but with like a curled up, mustache that he's always twirling. Rick DeSantis. He's very scary,
Ricky DeSantis definitely sounds like somebody who's been on parole. I'll just say, and I apologize to all the Ricky DeSantises out there that are like, "Oh, Clay, I love the show."
At some level, was that MSNBC? I appreciate the honesty, though, of MSNBC putting somebody on air to do political analysis about a candidate whose name they don't even know, because they might as well not know the candidates' names, because it's all fascism, authoritarianism, racism, They're calling it is authoritarian to not be the person that's advocating for playgrounds to be shut down. It's authoritarian to let people live their lives normally. They are inverting the most basic truth about what Ron DeSantis did in Florida to attack him, which is always an indicator of how dishonest the people you're dealing with really are. And I just think it's funny as well. There is a scoreboard that you can look at here. You can look at what's going on in Florida. Clay, you can't buy anything in I'm down here in Miami right now. You can't buy anything down here that's not 2 or 3 times as expensive as it was before COVID, because everybody's moving here, because everybody wants to live in Florida. You've been dealing with this in Tennessee and in Nashville area specifically for, the last decade. And Texas has been dealing with this for the last 15 or 20 years. People saying, I don't want to deal with authoritarian madness and lunacy. I want to go to freer states. But not only is DeSantis somebody who is presiding over a freer state, he created Florida as a red state that people are flocking to from a razor-thin blue-red margin. That's the difference here. He didn't inherit Texas and keep Texas. He took over a 50-50 state and has made it solidly red with 800,000 people showing up. And everything they do that's an attack on DeSantis turns out it looks like an ad for it. That's what's amazing.
It is. And let me just reinforce this, because I think it ties in with Trump as well. COVID revealed who politicians are. Because if Trump had truly been a fascist dictator, as they wanted to label him, never would any politician in the last basically 50 years have had more opportunity to take power and use it than Trump in the beginning days of COVID. And you know what Trump did? Mostly deferred to governors and mostly deferred to mayors. In fact, you can argue that Trump's biggest flaw in response to COVID was that he wasn't authoritarian enough, and that he deferred to tin-pot tyrant dictators like Anthony Fauci too much. But for this attack to be made by Michael Beschloss, it's worth mentioning a historian, that is how he makes his living, and political commentator on MSNBC. To your point, Buck, it's the exact opposite of what DeSantis did. He gave you the freedom to go to school, to not wear masks, to live a normal life when everybody else was shutting down all around him. And that's why this Gavin Newsom feuding business, and maybe we'll play a cut from DeSantis going out to speak at the Ronald Reagan Library. That's why this DeSantis feuding with all these other red state governors who are far more popular. He came after my home state governor, Bill Lee. He's come after Greg Abbott down in Texas a lot. He's certainly come obsessed with Ron DeSantis. The attack on DeSantis that is not going to work because, as you mentioned, Buck, 800,000 people have moved to Florida since COVID started. Probably almost 1 million now because the data is a little bit behind. The attack that's not going to work on him is he's going to take away your freedom. That is playing right into DeSantis' hands, in my opinion. Oh, Ron DeSantis is going to be a dictator. Well, his entire governance so far in Florida has been about enabling more power. And I do think this ties in with this whole book ban thing, which we need to talk about more during the course of this week, because that is a lie that needs to be shot down.
Yeah, well, what they're saying is anytime that somebody objects to a book for grade school kids that describes in pornographic detail sexual acts, they say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have this here on the shelf for third graders. You're banning books. Look at you banning books. I mean, think about this for a second. If you were to pass a resolution in a grammar school, no porn allowed on our computers, are you banning porn or are you preventing grade schoolers from seeing porn? Which of these is the honest position? They are totally lying about this. We can all see it. It's preposterous. They're the ones that are editing and changing some of the great authors of recent and distant history because it's too offensive to read. Oh my gosh, Shakespeare, can't handle it. And you know, with DeSantis, I think it's such an important thing for everyone to keep in mind here. We're bombarded with all this messaging and poll tested stuff and all this. At the end of the day, you want somebody who defends the Constitution, who makes it a better place, a better, safer, freer, more prosperous place for you to live, whether it's the country or you're the state that you live in. By every metric conceivable, Florida is a better place now than it was when Ron DeSantis was running in 2018. On the economy, on crime, population, everything. Go, population density and all the people who've moved here. Everything. And yet they still want to argue that, I mean, it's pathetic, right? California is collapsing under its budget deficit, its sclerotic state bureaucracy, its unbelievably burdensome welfare state, its high crime rates, all these things. People are fleeing who can flee. The opposite is happening in Florida, and Florida's the bad guy?
Just recognize what they're going to do. If you're out there and you're trying to pick a candidate and you're like, oh, I want somebody that they're going to like more, they're going to destroy that person. Guy or girl, doesn't matter who it is. They look at what they did to Mitt Romney. Look at what they're already trying to do to DeSantis. Pick your fighter. Don't pick somebody that you think the other side is going to like. You need a scrapper because they're going to try to destroy them. That's what they're going to do. It ain't going to be pretty. It's going to be nasty.